the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Hey everyone, good morning. James Azar here with your Practitioner Brief. It's March 30th, 2021. We have a great show planned for you guys today. Vulnerability in the netmask npm packages is on the deck, as well as the Docker Hub image download that's also on deck that's leading to crypto mining, a Linux kernel vulnerability, the Microsoft Exchange attack update, and the Hades ransomware gang, aka China, is on the move again. Good morning to Enoch, who's joining us live. Buddy, good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning into the show, we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, so make sure to subscribe right now and share our content. You can comment, and just like I brought Enoch up here in just a little moment ago, I'll bring you up as well. So good morning to all of those tuning in. If you're listening on your favorite podcast listening platform after the fact, please make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. That will ensure to keep us boosted in the ranks. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at KnowBe4 and Wistic. Make sure to check those folks out and the great work they are doing. We're starting a brand new challenge next week, so you guys don't want to miss it. I've got a really, really fun thing going on with Wistic. You guys are going to absolutely love it, so tune in to that. So before we get started, though, our ceremonial cup of coffee. So I got a brand new tumbler, which is why I don't have a double today. I've only got a single because I've got a tumbler, and it's got like 6 shots of espresso inside. It's supposed to last me about 4 hours, so I figured for today I'll drink a single with you folks. Cheers. So we've got people tuning in live from Ghana. I love Ghana, one of my favorite countries in the continent of Africa. Scott's joining us from Fort Worth, Texas. Everything is bigger and better in Texas, man. Scott, good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, guys, here we go. Let's get right into this, where the vulnerability in the netmask npm package is affecting over 280,000 projects. The newly identified issues, which is tracked as CVE 2021-28918, resides in the fact that the package would incorrectly read octal encoding, essentially resulting in the misinterpretation of the supplied IP address. It's designed to parse the IPv4 CIDR blocks to allow for their comparison and exploration. Netmask is highly popular. It registers millions of weekly downloads. At the moment, it is used by over 278,000 other projects. Because of the bug, netmask would consider private IP addresses as external IP addresses and the other way around, thus opening the door to a wide range of attacks depending on the manner in which the package is used. Some of the possible attacks include server-side request forgery, remote file inclusion, and local file inclusion, among others. A security researcher going by the name of Sick Codes explains that working together with application developer and researcher Victor Viali, Sick Codes discovered that netmask is incorrectly evaluating the first octet in an IP address that starts with O, which is the octal format, and reads it as a true decimal value. A remote unauthenticated attacker could leverage the vulnerability to trick an application using the flawed package into fetching malicious code from an external IP address as it was supplied from within the local network. This has some risk to an organization, specifically if netmask is being used. It could allow for remote attackers to get into your network. For example, an unauthenticated attacker can bypass packages that rely on netmask to filter IP addresses, blocks, to reach intranets, VPNs, containers, adjacent VPCs instances, or LAN hosts using input data such as 012.0.0.1 or 10.0.0.1, which netmask evaluates as 12.0.0.1. Even if the browser would recognize the octal strings, if a Node.js application does not, attacks are possible, which allow users can submit malicious URL that seem internal, yet which in reality they lead to remote files. The fix, the fix covered the manner in which netmask interprets the base 8 integrators and base 16 integers and hexadecimal input, as well as the situation where white spaces are used. All other packages and the API leverage netmask need to be updated to address the potential exposure to attacks. A great kind of a Slack conversation this morning with your DevOps team and backend team to make sure this gets done if you're using netmask, if it's part of your stack. Docker Hub images that have been downloaded over 20 million times comes with crypto miners. So researchers have found that more than 24 containers on Docker Hub have been downloaded more than 20 million times for cryptojacking operations, spanning at least the last 2 years. Docker Hub, which is the largest library of container applications, which allows companies to share images internally or with their customers or the developer community to distribute open source project. Aviv Sasson, part of the Palo Alto Network's Threat Intelligence Group Unit 42, discovered on Docker Hub 30 malicious images that are involved in cryptojacking operations. The researchers found that they came from 10 different accounts, some of which have names that clearly indicate their purpose, while others have misleading names like Proxy or GG Cloud or Docker. Images from all but one account continue to be available on Docker Hub at the moment. The owner of one account called XMR or XM Rig Docker appears to have pulled their images from the registry. In overall, over 90% of the mining was for Monroe, with another 6.5 for Gren and 3.2 for Uranium. They're expecting around $200,000 worth of crypto being taken this way. So again, significant with open source projects, anything to do with containers and the cloud. A lot of times the crypto mining and crypto technology is there to work on your backend without even knowing, just using your computing power in order to mine free coins for these threat actors. A few very important things. Monitor credit card and it gets charged to it, but it's still worth to have someone sign off on the bill and the data and to actually go in and review it at least, every few months or so, just to make sure that you're able to recognize any significant changes in your cloud cost, which would be due to crypto mining attacks like this one. A Linux kernel vulnerability can be exploited to bypass the Spectre mitigation. So the Spectre and Meltdown vulnerabilities that were disclosed in January of 2018, when researchers learned that billions of devices powered by CPUs from Intel, AMD, and other vendors were affected, an attacker can exploit the flaws and in some cases remotely to obtain potentially sensitive data such as encryption keys and passwords. Patches and mitigations have been made by both hardware and OS vendors, but many devices are still likely vulnerable to attacks because the patches and mitigations have not been applied. It seems that it's also possible to launch attacks due to the fact that some mitigations can be bypassed by attacker. Symantec reported on Monday that Piotr Kroisik, a member of its threat hunter group, has identified 2 new vulnerabilities in the Linux kernel that can be exploited to bypass the mitigations for the Spectre vulnerabilities. One of the flaws, which is tracked as CVE 2020-27170, can be leveraged to obtain data from a device's entire memory, while the second, identified as 2020-27171, can be used to obtain contents from a 4 gigabyte range of kernel memory. Both issues are related to extended Berkeley packet filter technology used by the Linux kernel. BFP enables the execution of programs directly in the kernel, but not before these programs are analyzed to ensure they are safe. This process should also provide protection against Spectre attacks, but the vulnerability discovered by the Symantec researcher can be exploited to bypass this protection, allowing a local attacker to obtain potentially sensitive data from the device memory. I want to point something out here. This does have impact, especially if things are unpatched. Furthermore, when we look at a patch is designed to kind of take care of the largest leak. It doesn't mean there's not any drippage anywhere. It just means that the biggest part of the leak is being taken care of in the patch, but you still have to look for the drippings around the corners or in places where you didn't think they would exist. This is exactly what we're seeing here. These patches, they help fix some things, but these vulnerabilities have also been patched in March, and they've already been deployed by several Linux distributors, including Debian and Red Hat. So you want to get this stuff patched and taken care of as well. We move to a Microsoft Exchange attack that are increasing while WannaCry is getting a restart, folks. So the recently patched vulnerability in Microsoft Exchange has sparked new interest among cyber criminals. The volume of attacks has increased over time. It's now being reported that according to Microsoft, there were about 82,000 vulnerable exchange servers on March 14th. About a week later, that number dropped considerably to roughly 30,000 as per the data from Risk IQ. Almost half of the exploits attempts occurred in the US, 49%. By far the most appealing region compared to other countries, UK, Netherlands, and Germany. Ransomware attacks go up. WannaCry is still a problem. Aside from the normal ransomware strains that are being observed, Maze, Ryok, and Revel, the company notes that 53% swell in the number of organizations affected by the wormable WannaCry ransomware. Almost 4 years ago, the WannaCry propagated through NSA's internal Blue for Windows server message block, causing hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. The malware has not been eradicated, though security firms continue to detect WannaCry even these days. In January, it was Trend Micro's top ransomware detection software ransomware in the Americas, with 1,240 cases of WannaCry ransomware. So some very interesting things here. Make sure you patch your Microsoft Exchange if you haven't yet. I know I say that daily since this happened, but it's important to keep repeating it until it sinks in. Our final story of the day, folks, and we're wrapping up here in just a few minutes. The Hades ransomware gang exhibits connections to Hafnium. So China on the move again, hashtag free Hong Kong. The Hades ransomware gang has several unique characteristics that set it apart from the rest of the pack, according to researchers, including potentially having more than extortion on the to-do list. The groups appear to use multiple nation-state tools and techniques. The researcher said that its investigation into the group's cyber attacks at the end of 2020 suggests one of two possibilities. There's an advanced persistent threat is operating under the guise of Hades, possibly Hafnium, or several different groups coincidentally compromised the same environment, potentially due to weak security practices in general. In one of the Hades ransomware attack, the Awake team identified a Hafnium domain as an indicator of compromise within the timeline of the Hades attack. Hafnium is the APT believed to be linked to the Chinese government, which Microsoft identified as carrying out the zero-day attacks on Microsoft Exchange servers using the group of vulnerabilities now known as proxy logon. Moreover, the domain was associated with an Exchange server and was being used to command and control in the days leading up to the encryption event, according to the posting. Based on another team's analysis, this domain was first seen in the Hades attack in December of 2020. Clearly, at this point, the vulnerability in Exchange has not been publicly disclosed, and the attack timeframe aligns more closely with the DevCore vulnerability discovery date. This clearly provides evidence of the attack prior to January 2021, which has been the consensus up until now. There is connection to other groups. There's a Romania IP address in here and some things going on in Romania. Doesn't mean it's not China, just could mean that China outsourced some of this stuff to some folks in Romania to do this, like they've done in the past, where they've outsourced stuff over to Russia, North Korea, and other places as well. So HADS has asked between $5 to $10 million in ransom. However, they are slow to respond in negotiations, according to multiple reports. Keep your eye out for these guys. They are out there. That's it for our practitioner brief today, folks. We'll be back tomorrow with more. So just a few scheduling updates. Tomorrow, new CISO Talk episode will drop at 5 a.m. Eastern, which would be 8 p.m. Sydney time. We'll have the other side of cyber right here live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Tomorrow night, the Tech Town Square will have a guest co-host. I will not be there. It is my wife's birthday. I'm taking most of the day off tomorrow to spend it with my wife. Last year I had COVID and we couldn't really do anything. So this year I plan on spoiling her rotten. So I will be out after the practitioner brief tomorrow. The Tech Town Square tomorrow night will feature Eddie Doyle and a really awesome guest. Last week, when we did the Tech Town Square, people were like, you guys should have someone from the FBI on the show. Well, that's exactly what we did. Ari will be joining Eddie tomorrow night at 8 p.m. right here on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube for the Tech Town Square. I'll be back tomorrow with the practitioner brief and again on Thursday. And a new CISO Talk episode will be dropping tomorrow as well, so you don't want to miss it. Until then, guys, thanks so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe. Wear your masks, social distance, COVID is still out there. I know things are opening up, but still be responsible. And most importantly, folks, don't click that link, and be very, very cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.